This is Joe Biden, the President of the United States. In June 2023, Biden hosted a Pride event on the South Lawn of the White House, and while pandering to the LGBTQ community, Biden made a startling claim.
We know real challenges still remain. When a person can be married in the morning and thrown out of a restaurant for being gay in the afternoon, something is still very wrong in America.
And taking into consideration how Joe Biden's brain functions, it's safe to assume exactly what scenario he's thinking about.
Hey, we don't serve their kind here.
What?
You're gay droids. They'll have to wait outside. We don't want them here.
Anyway, Biden has made similar claims about discrimination in the past, and I thought I would quickly look into those claims to see if there was any truth to them.
It's wrong for that a person can be married in the morning in the United States and fired in the afternoon by their employer because they're gay.
First off, who the hell gets married in the morning and then goes to work later that day? That's not a thing. Second, and more importantly, the Supreme Court ruled just 3 years ago that an employer can't fire someone based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. And if they do, it violates Title VII's prohibition on discrimination because of sex. And that means victims of discrimination have legal recourse. And I can promise you that there are plenty of lawyers chomping at the bit to take those kind of cases. So if there's already a law against it, then why is Joe Biden bringing it up? Well, because he needs to keep voters convinced that the members of the LGBTQ community are perpetual victims and that white knight Joe Biden is the only thing standing in the way of those evil, bigoted Republicans. And he'll say anything to back it up, even if it's a blatant lie. Okay, next claim.
When a same-sex couple can be married in the morning but denied a lease in the afternoon for being gay, something's still wrong.
But again, this is bullshit. Not renting to a couple for being gay is illegal under the Fair Housing Act. And the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, i.e. HUD, will accept and investigate all legally sufficient complaints of housing discrimination. But if you believed Joe Biden, and why would you? These landlords are refusing to rent to gay people, and the federal government can't and won't do anything about it. But of course that's not true, because if you're legitimately discriminated against, you have legal recourse.
When a person can be married in the morning and thrown out of a restaurant for being gay in the afternoon, this is still wrong.
Okay, so right off the bat, there is no federal legislation that protects someone from being discriminated against by a business, largely because it would be unconstitutional in many ways. Not that Joe Biden would have a problem with that. In my research, I did find a very small handful of alleged incidents regarding members of the LGBTQ community being harassed by employees of restaurants, like the gay couple that were yelled at by an employee at a Puerto Rican restaurant in the Bronx. And even though the woman was fired and the owner apologized to the couple, that wasn't enough, and protests were organized in front of the restaurant because, of course, there were. Then there was the event space that denied a lesbian couple access for their same-sex wedding because of the owner's Christian values. But here's the thing. If you go to a restaurant or business and you feel like you've been mistreated, then you not only have the right to complain to the world about it on Yelp and Facebook and Twitter, but you also have the right to find a business that will appreciate you and your patronage. Problem solved, right? But with that said, I found less than a half dozen stories about LGBTQ being denied service in restaurants. And believe me, if it was a widespread issue, you'd be sure that the media would be publishing headline after headline after headline. But the fact is, there are more stories about people being harassed and denied service for non-LGBTQ reasons.
The Cheesecake Factory suspended multiple employees Monday after a customer accused them of harassing him for wearing a Make America Great Again hat. Eugenia Joseph said he was eating at the Miami restaurant on Mother's Day with his girlfriend and her family. Joseph says employees began threatening and harassing him while he ate. Witnesses say employees surrounded Joseph and threatened to punch him.
That's crazy, right? It's one thing for an employee or an owner to loudly voice their opinion which I'm not necessarily defending, but it's another to threaten a customer with violence just because you don't like their political views. Then there's examples of restaurants denying Christian group service over their religious beliefs. Metzger Bar and Butchery, which called itself an inclusive establishment that has rarely refused service to willing patrons, said on social media that it denied service to the group to protect its staff, many of whom are women or members of the LGBTQ+ community. And I should point out that when it's a business pushing back on the so-called anti-LGBTQ groups, the left and the media always make sure to give them cover. The move was consistent with Metzger's past practices and was made out of respect for its staff. We have always refused service to anyone for making our staff uncomfortable or unsafe, and this was the driving force behind our decision. All of our staff are people with rights who deserve dignity and a safe work environment. Yes, the faith-based Christian group was going to create an unsafe environment. Makes sense to me, what's your problem? So, if you're a business who wants to deny a religious group from patronizing your establishment, don't worry. It's fine as long as you rarely do it. But on the other hand, if there's an attempt to operate a business according to one's religious beliefs, well, that's an affront to civil rights.
Lakewood baker who refused to make a cake for a same-sex marriage.
This case is about so much more than a cake.
It's about giving some folks in this country a license to discriminate.
It's about rolling back civil rights laws to a bygone era.
When the Supreme Court decides this case, it could decide that businesses across the country can discriminate against LGBTQ people in nearly every aspect of public life.
Think we're blowing it out of proportion?
Yes. Yes, you are, because it's been 5 years since that case has been decided, and if anything, LGBTQ+ people are even more of a protected class. But when the left talks about Masterpiece Bake Shop, they always leave out important details. Here's owner Jack Phillips.
At Masterpiece, we serve everybody who comes in our shop, but as we tried to point out, we can't create every message that people ask us to create.
Did you see it? Did you see the bigotry? Phillips has also said that he refuses to bake and decorate erotic cakes, Halloween cakes, cakes that are anti-American, and designs that would insult someone. But according to groups like the so-called Human Rights Campaign,
Truly, the ruling in the Masterpiece Cake Shop case could impede some of the most fundamental liberties LGBTQ people have.
Life,
Liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So if you allegedly discriminate against the LGBTQ people by not baking them the cake that they want, it's an immoral hate crime and it could affect the entire fabric of the country.
Communities of color, religious minorities, and basically anybody who's perceived as an other than the majority.
Oh, I see. They're worried about the religious minority. But if you're talking about someone in the religious majority, like Catholics or Christians, it's totally fine for you to force their values on them. I mean, it's not like America was founded on religious freedom or anything. And of course, if you as a consumer want to boycott a company because their values don't align with yours, then that's also your right. Unless you're doing it for the wrong reasons, of course.
Except some of these boycotts charged by social media are baloney. They're a tiny number of people, but they're supercharged by social media, so you'd think it would be a massive boycott.
It's a tiny number of people. It's not massive. It's baloney. Which is the exact thing Stephanie Ruhle is full of. Because since many shoppers began to boycott Target, the company has lost $15 billion in market value. And Target's stock price has dipped over 21% in the last month alone. Not to mention that analysts downgraded Target's stock outlook, citing an 8.1% drop in traffic in May and 13.9% during the first week in June. Oh, and let's not forget Bud Light's parent company, Anheuser-Busch, whose market capitalization has lost $27 billion because of the incident with They Who Must Not Be Named. Stephanie Ruhle can argue all she wants regarding whether these boycotts are massive, but they are objectively significant. And the fact that she's trying to downplay reality, well, that's the state of journalism in 2023.
And now they've gotten hijacked by this small group that, in some instances, is borderline terrorizing them and their employees.
So remember, folks, if you demand that a business sell you a product that they don't want anything to do with, f them. You're on the right side of history. But if you don't like that a company sells certain products, and you want to let your voice be heard by taking part in a boycott, then you're a terrorist. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on Twitter at Don't Walk Run. Be sure that you're still subscribed to the channel. And as always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time. If there is next time.